Hi, it's Hope and welcome to the video. If it sounds like I'm talking a little bit more quietly, it is because my parents are out in the living room and I don't want to make a lot of noise in here. Also, if I feel like if I look or sound like I'm out of energy, I am. I literally have been putting off filming this all day because I'm just so tired, but I need to film it. So this is just kind of going to be chill and relax. I might have a burst of energy, who knows. But this is my February wrap-up and stats. So I will first go up with the stats, which I will eventually post, like put a photo here. And then we'll go into the books that I read in the second half of February because I did do a mid-month wrap-up. I will leave that linked in the iCard if I remember, because half the time I forget. As well as the description. It will always be linked in the description. And if it isn't, well, comment to remind me, although it should be. So let's just quickly get into the stats. So in February, I read 21 books, which accumulated to 7,919 pages, which that's more pages than January, fun fact. My average star rating was a 4, I think it was technically like a 4.02 yada yada yada, but a 4-star. I read 1 audiobook, 13 ebooks, and 7 physical books. The age ranges were 6 adult, 7 new adult, and 8 young adult. I just realized it goes 6, 7, 8. And then I read 3 contemporary, 2 erotic, 7 fantasy, 8 romance, and 1 sci-fi. So romance was technically my highest genre because I think almost all of the fantasies that I read were also like fantasy romance or could be counted as that. So I definitely was leaned more towards romance this month compared to other genres. Speaking of romance, the first book I will be mentioning is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood, and essentially this we have Olive, who is a PhD student at Stanford? I could be wrong, but something like that, and essentially she ends up having to fake date this professor, not her professor. Let's just get that out of the way. And she fake dates this guy named Adam to kind of prove to her best friend that she's over her ex. And that ends up leading to a relationship. I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. I know it's only February, but I would say so far it is my favorite romance I've read this year, and it will take a lot to top it. I absolutely enjoyed it so much. I just love the fake dating, and it makes me want to read more books with fake dating. So if you have any recommendations, please leave them in the comments. And I just enjoyed this so much. It only took me 2 days to read. It was so fast-paced, and I am very, very, very excited for is it Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood, which comes out in August. I know it's August, and now I'm like, I need that now because I want to read more of her books. Okay, the next books I'm going to kind of talk together because they're the first and second book in a series, and that is House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, which I gave 5 stars, and House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas, which I also gave 5 stars. So the first book, I don't know which side I'm putting it on, probably over here. Getting the brain, brain is getting the titles mixed up. House of Earth and Blood, we follow half-fae Bryce Quinlan, who she ends up getting essentially almost like recruited to solve these murders because 2 years ago her best friend and some rather like her closest friends were murdered, and people thought that they caught the killer, but turns out hasn't, and now Bryce ends up having to help the Archangel Micah, who's essentially like the governor of like Crescent City, to do this, and it's a dangerous thing, so she ends up getting assigned a bodyguard in the form of Hunt Athalar, who is a fallen angel. And yeah, and so that first book, we have that, and then we have this book, which I have an entire reading vlog of. It's not up yet. I still need to edit it. Hopefully it will be up within like a week. But yet I wanted it up last week and then it didn't, so like it'll be uploaded sometime in March. I will say I prefer this book to the first one solely because of the ending. I cannot say why, but holy crap, I love this book. I'm already like, can I do a reread of it? Because it's just so amazing, and yeah. The next book I read / DNF'd is Your Dad Will Do by Katee Robert. This, essentially, we have, is the main character's name Lily? Who essentially, like, hooks up with her ex-boyfriend's dad. It's an erotic novella. I DNF'd it at 34% in, or 63 pages? 51. Don't know where I got 63 from. But this, it was like English. It was a group book for a buddy read that I'm doing with a bunch of people. It's like a book club, smutty book club. And I think everybody but one person DNF'd it / said not right now. And I'm like, I might pick it up again in the future because like what I read wasn't horrible. It's just, it's literally porn without a plot line, and I do prefer my erotic novellas to have some form of plot line. And then also this is a book that features like the like daddy baby girl talk, which isn't my favorite. Like here and there in a book is fine, but when it's like every single sentence multiple times per scene, I'm like, okay, hold up, you can call each other other things than that. Like I'm always like I don't know, it's just I just wasn't in the mood to read it. I DNF'd it. Dukes of Ruin by Samantha Ruin Angel Lawson, right? Yes, and this I gave a 3.5 stars. So essentially in Dukes of Ruin we follow Lavinia, who essentially gets sold to these 3 men called the Dukes, and essentially we are at this university, which is Forsyth University, and essentially the equivalent of like fraternities almost are these like royalty titles. So we have the lords, we have the dukes, we have the princes, we have the counts, we have the barons, and all that. And so Lavinia gets sold to the dukes to essentially be their duchess, and it's very dark, very like, definitely check the trigger warnings if you have like any trigger warnings at all. Basically, I would recommend not reading this book because it has like manipulation, sexual assault, there's violence, gore, all of that. It's just, it's really dark. And this is kind of the continuation of the brain farting. It's kind of a continuation of like the first 3 books in the series, being Lords of Pain, Lords of Wrath, and Lords of Mercy. Is that the 3 books? So like if you read those, you would like this. If you didn't like those, you wouldn't like this because it's basically like a similar plot line. It's dark. I loved it though. I'm very excited for, I've already forgotten the title of book 2, but well, it's book 2, but book 5. It's book 2 in this trilogy. It's book 5 in the overall series. I'm just gonna shut up about this series now. The next book I listened to this one, was The Ghosts We Keep by Maas and Deaver, and I listened to the audiobook through Libby, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. Essentially in this we have Liam, who loses their older brother. Their older brother gets killed in a hit and run, and essentially it is Liam having to deal with the grieving process, as well as also losing like their friends, like having fallouts with their friends, and then also kind of like learning more things about Ethan through Ethan's best friend Marcus. And then we also see kind of like some points in the book are also before Ethan dies, so you get to see the relationship between like Ethan and Liam, and how it's kind of like it's strained in some aspects, good in others. And this book made me cry so many times. It also made me scream at the goddamn characters. One thing I find when I'm listening to audiobooks, I will literally just like, if for example I'm cleaning my room, like I put away my laundry while listening to this, is I literally had to pause so many times from what I was doing and just be like, you're an idiot, you shouldn't have said that, you should have said this. And I find myself being more like engaging to the characters' reactions when I'm listening to audiobooks, so I really want to start getting into more audiobooks. And I also just really enjoyed this book. 5 stars. I have lost multiple people in my life, so I can feel a little bit of that grieving process, although I grieved a whole different way, but it's cool to see the various ways that people can grieve. And the next book I read, which is also another Sarah J. Maas book, is Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas, where essentially the first book in the series is Throne of Glass, and essentially we follow Selena Stardothian, who is an assassin, and essentially she was imprisoned in these mines, and then now she has the opportunity to gain her freedom. She competes in this assassin competition to essentially become the king's assassin, and she wins, and this is her kind of being the king's assassin, as well as discovering more things about the world, magic, and all of that. And I gave this book 4.5 stars. This is a reread for me. I absolutely loved it. Definitely world building that I missed the first time around, or that links to other things, and I really enjoyed this. I'm buddy reading this with a few people on Instagram, and yeah, I'm so excited to be continuing this series. And that reminds me, I need to get my hands on the copy of Heir of Fire, which is the next book in this series. The next book I read was A Legacy of Storms and Starlight by Victoria J.Price, and this I gave 3 stars. This is a kind of like a fantasy romance. In this book, essentially we follow Zyla, who she is imprisoned for killing the Crown Prince, and then upon her execution she ends up teleporting and discovering that she's half Fae, and she meets this Fae named Holt, who kind of like basically kind of forces her to go with him to this other city to learn more about the Fae and to kind of start a new life. And as I mentioned, it's kind of like a fantasy romance. It's new adult, it's the first in a series, and it was okay. Like, there was some good points that were like really good, that had me like gripped, and then there's other points that I was like, I don't care. Like the love interest, for example, I wanted the love interest to be one person, but it was the other person. But then I feel like the first person still has a possibility to come back around to be the love interest because of something that happens to love interest number 2. And it's kind of spoilers, in all honesty, but like, I'm not saying names. But I had trouble getting into the story. Like, I had to reread the first chapter a couple times to like actually dive in. To be fair, my brain was all over the place because I had literally just finished this. Was it the day before or that day? So like, of course this big book is gonna like kind of like, obviously I'm gonna kind of like struggle a bit, but it was a pretty good book. I didn't regret reading it. I'm happy that I did read it, so yeah. The next book I read and DNF'd was No One Here's Lonely by Sarah Everett. I made it to, is it 172 pages into this, so literally almost 50% into the book. Essentially in this we follow Eden, who one of her close friends, Will, passes away 2 weeks before graduation, and it's Eden having to deal with Summer without her friend Will, as well as her best friend Lacey is slowly drifting off. And it is like, we see grief, but we also, there is this like telephone company that essentially before you pass away you can sign up, and essentially you're like, not your memories, but it's like they're able to create like an artificial intelligent version of you to talk with people on the phone, and Eden ends up talking with Will. And this just, I couldn't tell you how many times I wanted to take this book and freaking smack Eden across the head because of how fucking annoying she is. Like, I'm always like, I'm like, oh yeah, she's a teenager, she just lost people, yada yada yada. But like, I've lost people. I've had things not go my way. Do you see me bitching and moaning every 2 seconds? No. Like, there's, like, her best friend Lacey decides that she doesn't want to go to like a summer camp with Eden to be a counselor. Lacey decides that she wants to stay back at home and to be with her other friends. this throws Eden's plan all out to the point that she doesn't go do the thing that she wants to do solely because her best friend doesn't want to. And then something as simple as Lacey not answering a phone call. Eden's like, oh my god, she must be with her other friend. She must not care about me. And it's like, no, she just has other friends. If she doesn't answer your call, that doesn't mean she hates you. It just means that she's busy. I just couldn't. It's not a bad book. It's just you have to get past that the main character's a little bitch. That's all I'll say. And then the final book that I read, well, I'm technically still reading it, but I plan on finishing it right after I film here. And it's a reread, therefore I know what happens, therefore I'm solid on my rating. And that is City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare, the second book in the Mortal Instruments series, where essentially the first book in City of Bones, we follow 15-year-old Clare Frey as she discovers that she's a shadow hunter, and shadow hunters are essentially humans with angel blood that have these extra abilities, and they use those abilities to face demons. And we also have downworlders, which are vampires, werewolves, warlocks, seelie and unseelie, and all of that. And this is the second book in the series, and this I'm going to be giving 4 stars because I do really enjoy this. I mean, I'm reading it the 3rd time. This I read for the By the Angel Along, hosted by Rebecca Fowle. I will leave that whole announcement video, but it's 1 Shadowhunter book a month. And I'm very excited to be rereading this because although the first 3 books in the series are kind of like, I love them, but the last 3 books in the series, that's what I'm really holding out for, is because I love those. But this book is it's a good book. It's a great book, honestly. I'm just kind of struggling to get through it. But 4 stars because I love these characters, I love this world. I would not be a reader without this series. Anytime I talk about this series, I always want to dwell on the fact that this was one of the first series that I read start to finish, loved, and just overall started not only my reading journey, but also my book collecting habit. As these were some of the first books that I went and bought with my own money and didn't borrow from the library or stuff like that. But those are the books that I read in the second half of the month. Let me know what your favorite book of February was, or just what you read or anything like that. Obviously, as you know, my favorite book of the month was obviously this book. I will gush about it till the end of days, and that vlog should be up. I'm saying fingers crossed within a week. I just don't have the time to edit. But I really hope you enjoyed this video. I think I've already said that. So I'm just going to end this video here, and bye!